thank you all who came to listen to my speech, also to team of Singular for organizing this wonderful event. I would like to speak today about the discovery phase. Just curious if anyone here know what is discovery phase. If there are, oh, nice, cool, awesome.
I have seen your slides.
Okay, that's, yeah, nice approach. So, just a couple of words about me. This is me and my picture as per Midjourney saw it. My name is Anatoly Rubtsov. I work at DataArt. We are also a software development and outsourcing firm. My position, current position, is the Vice President of Business Development. I'm responsible for this region, meaning UAE, Saudi Arabia, and all the nearby countries. But my former positions were the UX UI designer, the PHP developer, also Perl developer, 3D game dev artist, and also metal band growl singer. But this was not in DataArt. Okay, so just a couple of words about my experience with the subject, with discovery phases. I think during my career I organized about 20 of those in different countries for different industries, for different size of the companies. Though considering all this big difference, there's a lot of similarities between all these discovery phases, and I will try to cover them during my speech today. And the stories, I think the main two target audiences for this are both digital agencies who might benefit of some of the knowledge I'm going to share. Maybe you will find it handy for your own discovery phases. But I believe it also could be useful for the product teams, because when a product team needs to create a new product, a new digital product within the company, they usually encounter quite similar questions that the digital agencies encounter. So I hope this will be helpful for you guys as well. Okay, so what is discovery phase? Basically, a discovery phase is a phase of in-depth pre-project research aimed for gathering as much knowledge as it is possible about the project that the team is going to build. It's a wholesome analysis of everything that is relevant to the project itself, with the ultimate goal in the end to get not only the set of the requirements, but also the estimates and the roadmap, feature release schedule, public release schedule, and all those necessary things that customers like to ask from us. Typical reasons to have the discovery phase. I would outline 4 of them. First one is when the customer asks you for a budget and timeline estimate, but you just don't have enough information to give it to them because you don't have enough info and understanding what kind of project you're going to build. B is when the scope given by the customer feels unreasonably big, and it's a very, very common case in my experience when, for example, there is a company and they want to build, I don't know, new application for delivering something to someone. And so the CIO or the person who is responsible for this project, he goes to every department within their company, like support, like IT, like business, like to different sorts of managers, and like ask them, what do you want to see in this new application? And they start brainstorming and providing features and lots of features. So this person just after that accumulates all these feature requests into one huge document and sends this to the vendors as the RFP. And it usually requires everything, like every possible feature that could exist. And of course, it is no good for the company and for the final product itself. C is when you as a vendor need to reuse some existing code or infrastructure or anything that exists in the client's ecosystem. And of course, it's always a huge risk, and you need to analyze it first, understand if it's possible at all, or how complex would it be to work with it. And so it's also a part of discovery phase. Or D is when customer doesn't know at all what they want, or maybe when their vision is too high level, not too much detailed, and you need to dig deeply into these details. So steps and techniques. First thing is the team. I believe the optimum size and the setup of the team is the 4 people. First guy is the technical, or lady, is the technical architect. Their role is to analyze the code, the applications, the infrastructure, and do all this techie part of job, like speaking with technical people, interviewing them, and ultimately deciding the final technology stack for the project. There is also a BA, business analyst guy, or a lady. This person, it really depends on their skill set and their approach to the work. In its very basic format, BA works as a scribe, as a guy who writes down everything that's been discussed on the meetings, on the workshops. But in its better form, this person also starts working with Jira, with Confluence, and start forming the shape of the requirements that are going to be documented. So basically, they start defining epics, the whole structure, etc., etc. Then is the UX UI guy, or a lady. This person is basically responsible for all the interfaces, for the visual appearance. In my case, I was also touching the product type of the things, so I ran all the product-oriented workshops and everything that is relevant to user experience, interaction, ergonomics, all this kind of stuff. And the last guy is the project manager, or a lady. A project manager is a person who, they are not actively participating usually in the product scope itself, but this person is really needed to do the organizational kind of things. Because when it's a discovery phase, you need to book meetings, you need to arrange everything, you need to speak to the customer, you need to make sure that everything goes well. And this sounds like something like a boilerplate, but in real life, this person is really, really required to make sure everything goes according to the plan. And I strongly recommend to have this kind of person to be on site with the rest of the team. And all these people should have a senior level of the qualification of what they are doing. Maybe one of them could be more like of a middle-ish type of the person, but in general, the level of seniority must be really high. Otherwise, you can compromise a lot of things during the discovery phase. A couple of words of on-site versus online. Of course, during the COVID times, we did a lot of online discovery phases. They are less expensive to be done because you don't need to book hotels. You can do everything remotely. You can also record everything easier, just pressing the record button in Zoom. But to my opinion and my experience, on-site is 1,000 times better because you have a chance to see people in person, you have a chance to do all these icebreakers, team buildings, know your client well. Also, when you're in their office, you can see all the processes firsthand. You might define some secret stakeholders that you never thought of, etc., etc. So my vote is for the on-site approach. Okay, for the preparation. Before going to the on-site discovery phase, you need to do the real in-depth prep work. First of all, usually in a period like after you sign the contract and before you go to an actual on-site, there are a couple of weeks, maybe a month. It should be spent for looking into the existing infrastructure, stakeholders, requirements, everything, just to come prepared for an on-site. It's the worst case when the team arrives on the on-site for the client's office and they like, hey, hello, how are you? And just don't know anything about what they are going to do. Preparation is the key. Yeah, knowing the stakeholders you'll be working with, have a plan for the meetings, for all the workshops. Maybe not always for the whole week or 2 weeks that you're going to engage online, but at least for the first couple of days, you must have a very strict, detailed plan and timeline of what should be done. Typical on-site workshops. There are 3 main categories of the on-site workshops that should be executed. First category is to analyze. This is about working with everything that already exists. Existing infrastructure, existing requirements from the client, existing ideas, all of that. Second thing is then when you get all this input, you start to ideating on the things. This is about creating new things, new ideas, proposing new approaches, proposing new technical infrastructure, proposing new look and feel, UX, UI, product stuff, all of that. And third thing, it's a very mandatory and important step, in my opinion. It's when you get all this big picture of the product, you start to meet the reality of technical limitations, budget limitations, and many other things. So it's a step of cutting and carving, like removing everything unnecessary and shaping your ideal MVP scope. By the roles, of course, the architect takes on the technical tasks, like speaking with technical people. He's doing their own technical workshops. BA, again, depending on the skill level, they might be just writing down things, or they might have their own BA or product workshops. And UX, UI, of course, they are responsible for interfaces, aesthetics, usability, and ergonomics. My main background is UX, UI, so I usually plan discovery phases through that prism, so maybe I'm a bit subjective in some terms. My 4 favorite workshops are mind mapping, building personas, Nielsen Norman or Cooper style, brainstorming with whiteboard wireframing, and doing the user story mapping. So these are the 4 pictures that explain those workshops. By mind mapping, I usually consider the following. You got your initial input from the client, like an RFP, like some initial set of requirements, and you try to transform this into a mind map or like a screen flow diagram of all the screens and interfaces that are going to exist in your application. Like in this example, there is a root, which is my app. There is also main, like a main page of the application with a child of about page. There is also articles page with children of articles. There are also goods pages with single goods page and list of goods. And there is also a cart with checkout and success. Of course, it's a very simplified way. Real mind map is usually have a lot of branches on this huge tree. And it's really, really useful to understand the whole scale of the product you're going to build. Like how many screens you will have to design, how many interactions you will have to work on. Really important and useful. Second thing is building personas. This is more of like a marketing type of the thing, but I still believe it's really important because if you do those 3 typical clients or users or customers of your applications, it's then much easier for you to attack any guesses or suggestions or ideas of yourself and your colleagues when you're discussing, should I put this button here or there? Should I implement this functionality or that? Because you can always try to think, like, would Anna, 23 years old, be using this functionality or not? It's a very useful thing to be done. I also really recommend doing this. Third thing is my favorite workshops of all all the workshops. It's the brainstorming with whiteboard wireframing. This is the most tangible output of any brainstorming session that you can get. So, for example, with this mind map, you decided that on day 3 you would be discussing cart, checkout, and success page. You start with cart. You sit all the people in the room. They're starting to discuss. Okay, what should be in the cart? Like there should be like list of goods. There should be pay button. There should be something else. And you just start while you discuss this with them. You start sketching this on the whiteboard, and this always shapes the discussion in the right direction. So people start seeing their thoughts visualized on the whiteboard. They start to suggest, I was thinking maybe this picture should be on the left. Maybe it should be on the right. Maybe we should also add the recommended section with recommended goods, etc., etc. And you instantly correct this on the whiteboard, and by the end of an hour or 2, you get quite a detailed wireframe or a mock-up of every page that you have discussed. So you can later give it to a UX UI person who can use Figma or Sketch or whatever to make a more high fidelity wireframe out of this. Very useful, and the best output of it is that this draft would be aligned with every stakeholder who is participating in this discussion, because everybody participated in its creation. And last thing in this list is the user story mapping. It's a workshop from the category of cut and carve. It is used to remove all the unnecessary things. To do it, you must define like your 3 main 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever, 3 in my example, workflows. Then redistribute all the features that you have in your product you plan to implement between these workflows. Then draw an MVP line and cut everything unnecessary. Like in my case, it's an e-commerce application, so you can do three main things here. You might order the coffee pot, you might find physical store of this application to come there and physically see the coffee pot maybe. And third thing is you want to do the subscription for the coffee. So you distribute the features among this. Like for example, to order a coffee pot, you need a catalog, cart, and checkout. But there is also gift vouchers that are used for this, but they are definitely not MVP, so you put them below. And this way, then you can just use the features on the top to put them on the timeline, distribute them, and form the MVP scope, and the rest would be the timeline for further releases and further steps. Also, a very important thing to mention here is the limits constraints rectangle, as I call it. It's the scope, budget, technical limitations, and timeline. And this rectangle is usually being used for many steps, but especially for the last workshop I spoke about, because budget, limitations, and rest two of the things are usually the main reasons for you, together with the client, to remove some certain feature and thus to shape the MVP scope this way. Online continuation. So after a very, very intense week or 2 weeks on the on-site, when everybody is tired, wasted, etc., you take your planes, you fly back to your lovely home countries and offices. And this is where it is really important to not to lose the pace, because the client is used to see you every day in their office, and then, wow, it's a vacuum. Nobody comes, nobody asks questions. This is not what should happen. You must raise the level of conversations, calls, sync-ups, workshops, for the client to be sure that you're still here, you didn't disappear anywhere, you just changed the format of the work. And this is the step where you clarify all the requirements that was gathered, you do additional requirements gathering, and sometimes it's a good moment to introduce more people to your discovery team. Like more BAs if you feel that there is a lot of things to be analyzed yet, or more designers if you feel like there is 162 screens on this app and you really need more people to design it. And after that, the acceptance step comes. This is where you prepare your results, you gather them in one place. And my recommendation would be to do the first informal acceptance step. This is where you just share everything you gathered to your client and say, hey, how does it look? Does it look like what you was expecting? Then always they will have some feedback. You should iterate on this feedback, implement it, and after that do the final acceptance. And this final acceptance, I believe it should be a formal acceptance. You must get some kind of signature or something from the client, like, or just an email that's confirming that they are satisfied with the result, because this would be your strongest argument in any negotiations in the future where there could be some questions from the client side, like, I saw this one way, then you can always say, like, you accepted this, let's consider this as something we agreed on, but if you want to change something, it should be a separate discussion. And after acceptance, it's next logical step to do the smooth transition for the development phase, of course. But before going there, let's just quickly go through the list of deliverables that could happen or exist as a result of the discovery phase. This is my vision of this list. Of course, this list might vary. The main thing is the product vision and the roadmap. This is, and estimate, of course. This is what most people ask about, because one of the goals of the discovery phase is to get the estimate and the timeline of how long shall it take to build a product, or how much would it cost. It's also about NFRs, of course. It's also about the team composition, technical stack description. It's also about the wireframes for the key user flows. Of course, this is relevant for like products which have an interface. Sometimes it happens like the whole work is about some backend integrations and there is no interfaces, but in most cases they exist. And so it's a really important step. Sometimes those are wireframes, sometimes it's a clickable prototype, depending on your agreements. And the risk of and list of the risks and mitigation plan. It's also a really important part of the job that should be done to prevent those risks. Transition to implementation. It's a really important step to be done, because sometimes it doesn't happen instantly. Sometimes it takes some time to negotiate and agree on the start of the development phase, and this is totally normal. But in most cases, it's a smooth transition. So you finished your research, now it's time to start the actual development, bring in the main development force, your programmers, your DevOpses, your QAs, everyone else. So this step requires a lot of workshops for knowledge transfer, sometimes some team replacements, because usually for the discovery phases you involve like people who are focused on those, and sometimes they prefer to go to another discovery phase rather than stay in the team. You must be ready for all that and do these replacements and agree them with your customer. And of course you should start planning sprints, because this is what the developers would need when they would join your team and start working. Challenges and risks, ways to avoid them. So first and the most important risk, I would say, is the scope creep. It happens when you discuss things with your customer and they start ideating things on the way. Like you discuss, for example, I don't know, your shopping cart. They start thinking, I didn't think about that we need a shopping cart. Maybe we should put like a nice animation of the shopping cart so it like explodes and launches all over the screen, and with these tiny animations and maybe a video. It's really important to moderate such conversations and do an agreement with the client that if it's not like something that is really needed, we'd better put it somewhere in the backlog and implement later. Otherwise, you can get an oversized scope, which would actually nobody would be happy about. Because when you would start estimating this overinflated scope, the client might see that the budget and the time frame for the product is much higher than they expected. They will feel bad and they will finish the discovery and go somewhere deep to think about things and life and everything, and might never appear again. So it's really important to control your scope at every step of the discovery phase and at every step of the project development itself, of course. Then it's, I call it a chicken and egg case. It's when client says, like, tell me the budget first, then we can start any work, including discovery. It's a normal request. Sometimes clients doesn't want to start the work. They want you to define a budget and then start developing something. And this is really, I would say, popular among governmental clients, because they work in a budgeting approach. They need to allocate some sum of money and then start building something. Well, the simplest solution here is that you define some reasonable kind of budget and the time frame. Then you subtract the discovery phase time and cost out of it, and you set up as one of the constraints and the goals of the discovery phase is not only to research on the features that they want to develop, but also research on them in the way and design them in the way that they will fit into this remaining budget. And this is the best approach I know. If you know better approaches after my speech, we can discuss this in Q&A session. Another challenge is, I don't want your discovery. I don't see any value of it. Research is nothing, just let's start developing things, and that's it. It's also a popular approach. I believe like the main solution for this is the negotiation, because discovery is actually needed for both client and us as the vendor. If they really insist of skipping the discovery phase, as our colleagues mentioned, there are different types of the contracting that could be. It could be like hours built for the employees. It could be like a fixed price for the whole product. And when you start speaking in these terms, like, okay, if you don't want the discovery phase, meaning you would like us to take all the risks of the scope enlargement of anything that might happen, so let's put these risks in the price. And of course, this is not what the client would like to hear, so this is where the negotiation starts to appear. And honestly, I believe that negotiation is a key skill to solve this kind of things. Usually, you come to some median solution that fits everyone and everybody is happy anyway. And speaking about the blockers, last thing in this list, it's about things that might happen during the discovery phase, which can disrupt the whole process. And in my career, I encountered two main blockers that might happen during the discovery phases. First is the technical, when you need the access to the existing client systems, infrastructure, but you cannot get it because, for example, they are governmental client, everything is very secure there, you need a private VPN tunnel, you need to work through remote desktop, and you need to have a static IP if you're working from other country. A lot of things like this might happen, and it's very important to discuss and agree on all of that before you start the actual work. Because if it happens in the middle of the work, it can compromise everything. And human risk is no availability from stakeholders. It happens if you come on site with your client, but the CIO, CEO, all the engineering guys, they are so busy, they are always absent, they don't have time to be present on your meetings, and you have to literally catch them in the corridor to drag them into the meeting. This is not what should be happening. This is not the best outcome that should happen, and you should also agree with client that they should be always available for all the workshops. For the tips and tricks, just a couple of tips from my side. First is better ask than don't ask. It's always better to look stupid, but ask a stupid question, but avoid some problems in the future if you would have some gaps in your knowledge that you gathered from the client. It's better not to be hesitant and always ask if you feel that you need to ask something. Be agile and don't stick to your own ideas and vision. This is a thing that happens really often to the people from discovery teams, because when you work with clients' product more and more and more, you start getting your own ideas on how should it look like. And sometimes you get so sticked to your own ideas that you don't even want to hear the feedback from the client, from your teammates. This is not what should happen. This is bad for you, for the project, for the team, for everyone. Just be flexible and agile. Team buildings with your clients. This is really important. This is an icebreaker. It's just funny to see it with people, to discuss informal things with them. It's good for the client and for you and for changing the language of your communication to a more informal one. Sometimes it really helps to find out things you would never find out otherwise. Doing team buildings is great. And of course, you need to become a good partner for your client. His success is your success, and only together you can come to good achievements and build a good product for your dear and beloved customers. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much. Now I would be happy to hear your questions, please.